Hey, welcome yogis. This is Victoria Sky, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about Durga, our warrior goddess that is this week in our goddess circle. I wanted to tell you first just about our how Indian mythology constantly tells the story of this eternal battle between good versus evil, light and dark. Just like if you've ever been to see a Bollywood film, you're always getting this the same story every time, and see who's gonna win out the day. There's a text called the Diva Mahatma, and that translates to greatness of the goddess. And in this text, it tells of three great battles between the Devi, the goddess, and various different demons, asuras. Throughout the text, they call the goddess maybe like 200 different names. In our battle where we meet Durga, we're in the third battle in the third chapter, and this battle is coming up against a couple of demons called Sumba and Nisumba. The divas, which is quite a cool way of calling them as well. It helps you kind of imagine these sort of like magical beings with all of their full force of energy, use weapons which are powered by the force of their secret mantras, and invoking these can do things like turn a blade of grass into a deadly missile. So as humans, we also carry both that Devic energy in our higher selves as well as the Asuric demon energy in our shadow selves, where we find that ego and pride, loveless lust and selfishness resides. So we have our own struggles between that good and bad, light and dark. So when our story begins, we meet Sumba and Nisumba, and they have amassed an army of fighters with magical superpowers. Before undertaking their campaign of world conquest, they begin a long, intense course of yogic austerities, practices designed to empower the creator god Brahma to reward their efforts by giving them a boon, like a gift, standing on one leg, between five fires, arms raised heavenward, holding their breath for 1,000 years at a time. The brothers petition Brahma for the power to be invincible in battle. By the cosmic laws of karma, so much effort has to be rewarded. Besides, the heat generated by the demon brothers is starting to affect the weather in the higher worlds. Brahma agrees to grant the brothers a guarantee from above that no man or god can defeat them in battle. The boon, however, contains a loophole. No mention has been made of women or goddesses. That hardly seems to matter. There are no women warriors on earth, and the goddess has chosen to channel her skills at war and kingship through male bodies right up and down the chain of being. Taking form as the consorts of male gods, she lends them her powers, ruling from behind the curtain. As they used to say of powerful concubines in Asian royal courts, never showing her hand. Now that they are more or less invincible, the demon brothers conquer the earth. They declare themselves rulers of the upper and lower worlds, and in one final push, expel the divas from their abodes. Now the heaven of Indra is filled with the places and pleasure gardens of Sumba and Nisumba and their minions, which sprawl like small cities over jewelled lawns. The brothers, having conquered everything worth conquering, devote themselves to collecting art and women, to building houses, and to commissioning songs of praise. Over several thousand years, they pursue the refined pleasures of upper world aristocrats. They study the arts of astrology, lovemaking. They capture scholars and spiritual teachers to supervise their meditations and to perfect their knowledge of esoteric texts. Meanwhile, the gods wander the sub-celestial worlds, plotting revenge without success. Then one day, a friendly sage visits Indra to point out the loophole in the brothers' protection guarantee. No man or god can defeat the Asura brothers, he tells the desperate kings of the Devas, but nobody said anything about a goddess. Go to the abode of Durga, the Mahadevi, the supreme goddess, the sage advises Indra. Beg her to appear in the world. She is just waiting for you to ask. So Indra and the other gods travel to the Vindhya mountains, where the Mahadevi resides. It is not an easy trip. To find her abode, they have to rely on intuition and guesswork. For a celestial century, 20,000 years in human time, the gods petition her. They sing her praises, O goddess, shining one, who lives within everything in the form of power. Praise to you, praise to you, praise to you. O goddess, who lives within everything in the form of consciousness. Praise to you, praise to you. Between prayers, the gods contemplate their own hubris, their forgetfulness. Why did we think we were in charge? They ask themselves ruefully. They invent new hymns addressing her as sovereign, as queen, as mother, especially as mother. Bad sons we may be, they sing, with jeweled tears glistening in their eyes. But there could never be a bad mother. Help us, we are your children. At last, the air begins to shimmer with an unmistakable force, sweet and fierce, tender and diamond hard. Durga appears out of the earth, glistening and dark, with blue-black skin and flowing lustrous hair. Her form of light clothed in robes whose colours shift and slip, revealing and concealing the beauty of her breasts, the curve of her belly. An erotic perfume surrounds her, and yet her aura of untouchability keeps the gods on their knees. She rides a lion. What brings you here, Indra? She says, as if she did not know what havoc the Asuras had wreaked in their world. O Durga, O Ma, says Indra, our world is in ruins, and no male god can save us. So, only in extremis do you come to me for help, she asks. Indra knows enough to let that pass. He knows that she can do no less than save her world. A moment later, she agrees. Yes, she says, I will intervene to restore the balance of the world. Enchantress that she is, the goddess has no sooner spoken than she has taken herself to the scene of the coming battle. As she sits carelessly on the back of a lion, her silken skirts brush the grass, flowers drip from her fingers, and clouds form and dissolve in her hair. Her body emanates rays of sensual bliss, and her eyes, well, no one has ever looked into her eyes without falling in love. She is beauty personified, sexuality clothed in form, enchantment itself riveted. Enchanted by her beauty, by her graceful poise, by the gentle power of her divine self-confidence, the palace guards send messengers to the inner chambers, and within moments the demon kings have come to their windows to look at her. They are connoisseurs of feminine beauty. They have never seen a woman like this before. Some celestial maiden, they agree. Perhaps one of the devas has sent his wife or daughter as tribute. Of course they want her. Why wouldn't they? The palace majordomo saunters out of the garden and salutes Durga. Only the slightest hint of menace in his manner. Since you are in the garden of their majesties, he says, I must assume that you have some interest in my lords. And fortunate one, they have seen your beauty and are delighted to invite you to join them to the legion of their wives. The goddess looks demurely at the ground. Indeed, she says, I have longed to know the Asura kings, but there is one difficulty. I am the daughter of a warrior race and must marry an equal. In my girlhood, I took a silly vow that I would only marry a man strong enough to defeat me in a battle. You know how girls are, full of fantasy and romantic notions. But a vow is a vow. If your masters really want me, they'll have to fight with me. Lady, you are either suicidal or mad, says the majordomo. No one has ever defeated my masters. It would break my heart to see such a delicate maiden die. Nonetheless, that is my condition, says Durga, giving him a languorous glance that the majordo feels stirrings of lust in every single part of his body. And if your masters are afraid to do battle with me themselves, I am happy to take on their whole entire army. Very well, I will convey your message, he says, and hurries back to the palace. The demon kings are intrigued. This lady has spirit, they agree, almost equal to her allure. They send messengers of increasingly higher rank and persuasive powers, but she will not back down. Finally, Sumba gets impatient. He tells the captain of the guard, go out and drag her in here by her hair. The captain marches forth, accompanied by a platoon. As he approaches, the goddess says, why are you here? I have challenged your masters. Madame, they do not fight women. We are here on their behalf. So be it, she says. A sword appears in her hand. She points it in their direction, and swifter than light, the captain and his men dissolve on the ground into puddles of disjointed matter. At this point, wisdom might suggest to the demon kings that there is more going on here than meets the eye. But the ego, especially in its inflated state, is not necessarily wise. The demons send a larger company. The goddess, with the same languorous smile on her face, bids her lion to open his mouth. The soldiers are drawn inexorably into the lion's huge jaws. Now the demons realize what they are facing. They remember the loophole and realize that they must defeat her or die. Their magical host, under the command of the generals Chanda and Munda, spring forth from every corner of the kingdom, converging on the slender figure in the garden. Fierce demon warriors with bared teeth and buffalo heads, creatures with teeth and fangs, lion-bodied, many-armed creatures of flesh and illusion attack the goddess. At this, the terrifying goddess Kali emerges from Durga's third eye. Emaciated and wearing a garland of skulls, roaring, she falls upon the army. As she cuts off the heads of the generals, she offers them to Durga. But the battle doesn't stop. Now comes the army of the demon general Ragatabiji, whose name means drop of blood. Every drop of his blood has the power to turn into a clone of this magic warrior. To wound him is to give birth to a host of others, each with the same magical power. He represents different faces of the self-seeking mind, which pops up every time you think you've knocked it down, always with a new disguise. Suddenly, Durga lets out a roar that shakes the heavens from her bodies, and emerges a host of beautiful goddesses who each hold the full Shakti of the gods in themselves. They ride celestial vehicles and carry innocent-looking implements that hold deadly powers. Indrani, the Shakti associated with Indra, rides an elephant that tramples the demons underfoot. Saraswati, astride a celestial swan, sprinkles water from a monk's bowl, and as the drops fall on the shoulders of the soldiers, their bodies dissolve. Vaishnavi, the beautiful Shakti of Vishnu carries a mace that she whirls with deadly accuracy and extraordinary effect. And finally, from one of Durga's bodies flies the terrible goddess Tara, Chinnamaster, the headless one, Bavari, the fierce. Along with them, Kali challenges the host of Rajakabis, her tongue licking up the blood of the soldiers so that they can no longer be reborn from the spilled blood. Within half an hour, shockingly, the army is vanquished. Now Sumba and Nisumba have no choice. They have to fight the goddess themselves. By now they know who she is. It is the ego's last stand, and they approach the battle with full pride in their strength. Nisumba is the first to die. Now roaring and as large as the palace itself, Sumba advances upon the goddess. You challenged my army, saying that you would fight single-handed, shouts Sumba, in a voice so loud that it shakes the nearby hills to powder. But look, you have helpers. Your challenge is forfeit. Not so, roars the goddess, vibrating the sky with rumbles of celestial thunder. These goddesses are parts of myself. I alone exist in the world. What second other than me is there? O wicked one, behold these my powers, entering back into me. With that, the other goddesses melt back into her form, leaving just Durga, shining with an almost blinding light. When I showed myself here in many forms, it was by means of my extraordinary powers. Now I've withdrawn them, I stand utterly alone. And she calls out the warrior's blessings. May you be resolute in combat. The goddess's 8-armed form swells and fills the sky, twirling with one hand her great sword like a baron, and the axes, maces, spears, and crossbows in the other. She flies through the air, dancing between the demon kings, rising with them into the heavens, sinking below the earth, until finally they die on the ground, wounded and bleeding. Ma, says Sumba, with his dying breath, and then a smile comes over his face as the ecstasy of the goddess fills his being. In this instant, both the demons are transfigured, dissolving into Durga's body, dying into the mystery. When the ego dissolves, even the most demonic soul comes back home to the heart of the mother. And that is the battle in the third part, and gives you some sensation and feeling of our goddess for this week. I hope you enjoy welcoming her in and invoking her power of protection and accessing the goddess.